Hello friends, and welcome back to Learning from Experience video series. And in this video, I'll show you how to capture experience. Quick agenda for today, I'll highlight the goal. We'll go through experiential learning process just as a review. And most of the video we'll spend doing a hands-on demo. The goal is pretty simple. I'll show you how I document human experience, and we'll use a practical example because it's more fun. So in our previous video, we saw that there's this learning step and it decomposes into 3 sub-steps, which is capture the experience, reflect on the experience, and then document lessons learned as part of overall learning process that we use for experiential learning. And this video will specifically focus on capturing that experience. So that first step, very important. Let's dive right into it. I already have everything preset just for sake of time, a little bit. We can see that we have Hack the Box. We're going to do this very simple vaccine machine. It's already up and running. We already have it spun up. Of course, I went through the experience before, but our friends over at Hack the Box give us like these questions to guide us through the experience to answer if we get stuck. In this case, I have all of them answered just because I've been through it before to prep, for the video. But the ultimate goal is usually to get the user flag and to get root access, which again, if we get the flag, we got the access, right? Our Kali Linux is ready to go. We'll do a quick ping test to make sure that we're still connected to this VPN and to this target machine. And before we begin, I like to think of, Cherry Tree. It's kind of like a photo album. And what I typically do, as you kind of saw me there cheating a little bit, but I'll create a parent node. You can call it whatever you like. I just call it the machine name. And just to kind of get us started, I'll create a subnode. I call it Scratch, like a scratch pad, like write down my thoughts, commands, whatever else I want on there, just free flow kind of like exploration, right? And now our kind of like photo journal is ready. Our camera is ready. We're ready to go. So let's begin. First thing I like to do typically is just to store the IP address in an IP variable, just so I don't have to retype the 10.129 IP address. And then we'll run like nmap. If you're not familiar with what nmap is, it just runs a port scan to see what ports are available on our target machine that we're looking to penetrate or hack. And while that's running, that's where I start to kind of like think through the experience, kind of organizing my photo journal, if you will, as a responsible journalist, I guess, in this case. What I typically do is create subnotes, and depending on what I'm doing, typically they're named after the tool. So like I'm running an nmap scan, I'll create that, and this will be like a little area for me to store anything I see in the nmap output, right? So we'll go back to this, and we see that it finished running its scan. We see that port 21 FTP is open. We see port 22 SSH is open. We see port 80 is open, right? Pretty standard, nothing too crazy. We also get some other information like Apache servers, the one that it's using to serve the files. It's running on Ubuntu, etc., right? And as a responsible photojournalist, I'm going to think of myself in this video. We're going to document the experience, right? We're going to take a picture of it so we can reminisce in our memories of this delight later on. But we'll also do a little journaling. So we'll kind of take notes like, hey, we found FTP is open, SSH is open, port 80 is open, so HTTP, etc. And that kind of gives us a little bit of starting point to say, okay, well, why don't we try FTP, see what we get there. And for that, we'll do a file transfer protocol, IP address. There's a username and password. And nice thing about this, we can always Google to see, what can we possibly do with that. A quick Google search tells us that we can do anonymous as the login. It's one of the options, kind of like a default option. And that allows us to log in without a password, possibly. And in this case, it works, right? So nice thing about this is I'm kind of going through it really fast in real life as you're fumbling through the experience. It's going to be kind of messy, kind of sloppy, very unstructured. You're going to go here, you're going to go there. And that's okay, and we'll take more time. At some point, I might pause and Google some stuff, research stuff. Again, those are normal things as part of the capturing experience. In this video, though, I will kind of go through it a little bit faster just for the sake of time, and I've already done it, right? But we can take a look to see what files are available. We'll see there's a backup.zip. We can go ahead and get the backup.zip and just kind of like download it from the server to our local machine, which we'll have here. And we can see we have a backup.zip, right? So now we can be like nosy and say, ooh, what's in there? So we can unzip it just using an unzip tool, and boom, there's a password. I don't have the password for it. But again, as any even non, cybersecurity professional, it's like, ooh, there's a password. Can we crack the password? Well, the answer is probably, depending on what kind of a password it is. But a quick Google search allows us to realize that we can use John the Ripper, which is one of the many utilities out there. And some guy out there on maybe Reddit, maybe some other website, says that this is a sequence of commands that I can use, and I can just give it a try. Again, very exploratory type of a deal. In this case, we're doing the backup.zip and just kind of converting it into a backup.hash, right? So we did just that. And then we want to take this hash file that we have and see if we can crack the password in it to be able to actually get into our zip file, right? Again, commands are very Googleable, and it's okay if we don't know what the commands mean. You'll see kind of how it all ties in the subsequent video, but those are effectively our knowledge gaps. So right now I'm kind of like a script kiddie, just kind of fumbling through because somebody on the internet says it works. We give that a shot, and right away we see that we got the password for that zip file, right? Again, we don't want to get too carried away. We want to kind of reel ourselves back in. Always document things. And in this case, maybe we'll create another node, since this is kind of like part of the Nmap scan over here, but it's specifically we're looking at port FTP or port 21. And we found backup.zip password, and we're gonna like copy paste password effectively. So again, nothing too crazy. Now we can try it again, see if we can unzip the file. And the password is like 741 85 2963, right? And we got a couple of files out of it. We got index.php, style.css, standard like web app files. We can kind of be nosy and see what those files are all about, see if we find any clues, kind of like a detective. And we'll just use a simple cat command to take that index.php and just kind of dump the code of it onto our screen, right? So in this case, we're just doing a simple visual inspection. However, we can get more crafty and use like grep commands to do like a search for specific keywords like password. In this case, we can right away see that, hey, there's some sort of an admin login. It has a hash, so it means the password is hashed. And we can even see generally what hashing function it uses, which is MD5, right? So again, before we get too carried away, we'll kind of like document our experience, like, ooh, found something interesting, right? Again, I like to think of this as almost like a vacation. Maybe we'll do like this. We'll do another one. We'll say backup.zip. We found this, and then we have like a password that we found in it that's admin. We don't really know what it's for. We also, by password I mean username. We also know that there's a password that's an MD5 hash. I can never highlight it. But we don't know what the actual password is. Again, if we're not familiar with what a hashing function is, or specifically what is an MD5 hashing function, does it have vulnerabilities? We can do a quick search and learn some new things. In this case, we do know that the MD5 is a weak function. It's been cracked, and our friends over at Google even did a demo where there's multiple passwords can result to the same hashing value. Back in, I think, 2017, there was a research paper on it. So to kind of work with that hash, see if we can, again, crack it using John the Ripper, we'll do a simple, we'll create a simple p.text, just password.text. And in this case, we'll save this hash of it in that file. And that just allows us to work with the file with the hash. So we can like see it, it's here, p that text, we can, you know, dump it on the screen, so to speak, and see that it works, right? So now we can say, okay, well, can we somehow maybe crack that and use John the Ripper again? And the answer is yes, of course. Otherwise, why would I be doing this video? Quick command, we're going to use like a Rocky.txt again. In this case, what it does is it's actually pretty simple. Like it has a huge list of passwords. It uses the function to convert it to a hash value. And then it takes the value that we supply it, which is this one here, and it just matches them and sees if there's a match. If there's a match, then that's the password that, you know, was used to create that hashing function. And lucky for us, the Rocky.txt had a password that matches that, which is this, QWERTY.785 or 89. So again, we'll kind of continue to document our fun experience here. Maybe we'll take another picture of it just to make sure. And we know that the password is this QWERTY789, which is like a very weak password. And we can, you know, look for other things, other clues, but for now, that's kind of it. So we go back to our Nmap scan and we know that, hey, there's also, you know, port 80, which is HTTP, and that's just a web browser, right? So for that, we'll kind of use Burp Suite to mess around, see if we find any other clues there. Since it's very simple, everything is default settings. Very easy. We'll open that up. We'll go to the proxy tab to make sure intercept is off, open up the browser, and we'll give it a shot. The one thing that, so I'm kind of copying this stuff. The one thing that I like to try, and I like seeing, is when you actually send requests to the web page, it like tells you, you know, what's going on here, and it will have other things pop up as you send get, and you get like a post request or a get request. And that allows you to explore other things. Again, not a Burp Suite class, but I just like seeing it pop up. Looks cool. But interestingly enough, we get to like a login page, and we already have a password, username password combination, right? So we'll give that a shot. We can of course try different standard like admin password combinations. In this case, that just happens to work. But I don't know, I always find it cool to see other pages. We can see that there's a dashboard.php. You can also like do like replay type stuff where you can modify it and send like a post request again. In this case, it's pretty simple. So we can see that we, in the URL, we access dashboard.php. We get to this website. It looks like a car catalog of some kind. There's a search function in here. So we know it's probably like querying something against the database. We can try messing around with the search function. We can do other things. But long story short is we right away say, well, I can submit something to the server like the search and it executes. And then you can see I did like an S and it executed or send a, I think it's a get request, yeah, with the search parameter equal to S, right? Okay, well, the question is like, can we do SQL injection attack against this system? And the answer is maybe, maybe not. We don't know if the search parameter is vulnerable or not, so we can find out. And lucky for us, there are things that, tools that allow us to do just that, right? In our case, there's SQL map tool. Again, somebody on the internet said it works, possibly. And the most important thing here is going to be to get the session ID, which we'll need. And we can get that from just inspecting the web page itself. And of course, I already have a different session ID because I tried this out before, but we'll use a current one and see if that parameter is vulnerable to any sort of injection attacks. And while it's running, we can look at other things. We can look at other information that's provided in here. In this case, we don't really have to do that because I have a feeling that the parameter will be vulnerable. And we can see that it says, yeah, search parameter is vulnerable. Do you want to continue with this scan? In this case, we'll just stop it. And we get just that. Again, being a responsible photojournalist, take some pictures. And in this case, we'll create another node that says like, I don't know, HTTP 80. Search parameter. We also can see that it's like a Postgres SQL database. Just see it here, etc. Right. So we right away know what kind of database is running in the backend. Again, a quick search with Google can tell us what we want to do. But in this case, we want to kind of like see if we can establish some sort of way to execute commands on a database server. So we're going to run the same command and we're just going to say like essentially do an injection attack to establish a shell on the target machine. And we got our shell, right? It might be good, it might not be good, but typically when we got like our first shell, we're thinking like, okay, well, can we establish a reverse shell where it will make a connection from the server to our machine? So we can send commands from our machine to the other one to do more interesting, fun things, right? So let's do that. We'll do like a quick, for us to be able to do that, we first have to like set up our machine to listen for incoming connection requests. In this case, we're going to use Netcat on port 443. We'll run that. And we can also do some Googling to figure out like what is the command or commands that we can use on the server side with this shell to make that request back to ourselves on our kind of like on our own machine, right? In this case, we see this command that's like bash -i caret whatever else. Do some simple modifications. And aha, we got our shell, right? So at this point, we're like kind of sending commands from our side to the other machine. It's a very simple way to explain that. Obviously, there's a lot more to learn. But for now, we can come in here and say like, let's say, who am I? See like what user or what service am I logged into this machine as? In this case, I'm logged in as Postgres, right? Lucky for us, our friends over at Hack the Box make it very simple for us to find the flag, but essentially we can like, they tell us where the flag is at. They don't try to be too crazy with it. So we see there's a user.txt in this directory. We can dump the content of it onto the screen. We're like, oh, that's cool. Continue to document our experience here real quick. So we know what the flag is, right? But then we also remember that we had an Apache server, which nice, interesting thing about Apache server, it stores a lot of its root files, those like index files in this folder. And we can see if there are any other files in there. And we see that there are, right? There's dashboard, there's that dashboard PHP that we requested before, etc. So we can go through and see, explore all those files. In this case, I'm just going to go straight to and go to dashboard.php, and we'll dump the content of it onto the screen just to kind of, again, see if we find any clues, any interesting things. We can go through it. But in this case, we can right away see there is, whenever the service connects to the database, it uses username Postgres, password is just open to us, which is like, ooh, okay, that's interesting. So maybe like found username/password. We're gonna take our Gonna take some pictures of it, right? Because we always want to take pictures. And it just allows us to not have to go back. So if we want to take a couple of hours to figure out the next steps, we can do that. In this case, we see that the address is, or password is this weird password. Password is password with goofy characters. And we can continue to explore our system, right? In this case, we see that the system timed out. We can just connect to it again in the same way. For the sake of time, we're just not going to continue. We can stabilize the shell as well, but we're going to go back and say, well, hey, if we got this username password and we did this nmap scan and we had like SSH, right, which is a remote connection, can I just connect to it like a normal user? Using Postgres as like the username with the password that was provided. Maybe not. Something is not working here. Life is just not working out for me today. But that's okay. We're gonna work through this. Let's see, what was the password again? Aha, and we connected. So something maybe not working. We'll figure it out later. But most importantly, we connected to our target machine as the user, right? So we already got the user flag from previous video, but we can again kind of like pretty much at this point not have to worry about that the shell is gonna time out. We can even do like we can see that the user.txt is still there, right? But as part of our last step in the experience, we're like, well, we have to get the root flag. So we're like thinking privilege escalation. Lots of ways to escalate privileges. Do a quick search. We might poke around the system to see if there's anything else that's problematic with it. But in this case, we're going to do a very quick one. We're going to see what commands can I run as super user, elevated privileges, right? And the one thing that we do find is that we can run the VI and we can open this pg_hpa file, right? Using that. Again, we can do a quick Google search to see if there's any sort of exploits that VI has. Can we use that to elevate privileges? The answer is, of course. So we'll do just that, right? And we'll run this as super user. I'm not going to be completely retarded about it. And we run this file as super user. So it's kind of like escape out of it, if you will, which again, like a very simple search can let us know how to do that, and it's part of the experience. We can set the shell and we can run the shell effectively. We're running the initial file as with elevated privileges, and then within the file we're saying, hey, if I run a shell from that, use this directory, which is bin.sh, which is like default in Linux, and then we run the shell, and now we're back out to a shell, but now I'm logged in as root, right? So if I type in who am I, I'm root, right? And lucky for us, at this point, I pretty much have full control of the system. Our friends over at Hack the Box don't get too elaborate with like hiding the flags and directories, but thank God. And at this point, it's just in /root/root.txt, and we get our file, right? So again, we kind of like keep doing this. We want to document our experience, the fact that we kind of went through. Then maybe like we'll add another little note here. Let's say Privesc. And then shell, right? And there's a colon for each one. And that's pretty much it, right? So now we've finished the experience. We can go back to Hack the Box. We can, fill in the questions, answer, and we're done. But here's the most important thing. Now we have this experience documented, and it was kind of confusing and kind of convoluted. And I went through it. And if I finish here, I actually didn't finish doing as much learning as I could, because if I look back and kind of reminisce in my experience, it's kind of like you come back from a vacation and later on you look at your photos. We can start to kind of go through it a lot more systematically, right? So what happened first? Well, we ran like an Nmap scan. We identified some ports. Then we explored, FTP. We went to FTP, downloaded this backup.zip file. We kind of played around with John the Ripper, cracked the password on a .zip file, looked inside of it, identified some additional files. That was index.php and style CSS. We found another password or a hash in index.php, played around with John the Ripper some more to crack that password, and we got username and password. Then we kind of traversed back to our, original split, which was port 21, and we went to port 80. We used Burp Suite to kind of look at the website a little bit. We right away logged in, saw that there was something with the search. We can send, data to the database, which was Postgre. Said, hey, can we see if we do an injection attack? The answer was yes. We used SQL map for that. And then we were able to establish effectively a reverse shell. After the reverse shell, that's when we got the initial flag. We also looked at other files that were, in this case, an Apache directory, and found the actual user login password, which was that password with Postgre as the username. We logged in with our SSH, right? And here's all the documentation kind of for it. Logged in with our SSH. Again, we could kind of explore the system at that point. We don't do it here, but we decided, hey, we want to elevate our privileges. Can we do that? Well, there's lots of techniques. We just said, what can we execute with our sudo command or elevated privilege command? We saw that there is a VI that we can, a file that we can open with it, and we logged in that and kind of elevated our privilege. So now you can kind of start to see how this kind of unstructured, convoluted experience, as we're kind of documenting, taking pictures, slowly taking little notes, fumbling around through it, is starting to become like a little bit more step by step by step, and we're like capturing that experience. We haven't begun learning yet, and that will be the next video, as we start to say, okay, now we can reflect back on this experience. We have documentation, and start to say what worked for us, what didn't work for us, and then take those lessons learned, kind of pull out those knowledge nuggets out of this overall soup sandwich of an experience, and then store it somewhere. And hopefully you'll come back and see the next video, but in the next video, we'll do exactly just that. We're gonna make sense of our experience using frameworks. I'll show you how I make sense out of some experiences using just like process modeling, and then run you through a quick way to set up a knowledge base that allows us to quickly and easily extract that knowledge in subsequent attacks, as well as kind of highlight some more advanced features in terms of how you can scale not just how much knowledge you have, but what other applications besides time save can you have for a knowledge base. So that's all I got for this video. Again, thanks for watching. Thanks for bearing with me, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video. Bye.